Well, let's continue on with our studies, shall we? Today we're going to talk about the difference between witchcraft and sorcery. And from antiquity and today. I also want to talk about the differences between witchcraft, sorcery, and shamanism, the difference between spiritualism and necromancy, and also traditional religions that have magical practices. Now, like I said from the very jump, every single religion has magic in it. Doesn't matter if you're Catholic, doesn't matter if you're Buddhist, doesn't matter if you're Wiccan, doesn't matter if you're in Islam. There is a magical component, metaphysical occult component that comes with every single religion. Now, I am a spiritist or a spiritualist. I practice spiritism. And spiritism is not a religion. Spiritism acknowledges that there's a spiritual world and we believe in the immortality of the soul, okay, at the most fundamental level. So as a spiritist and a spiritualist, I work with spirits, but I don't need a religion to be a spiritualist or a spiritist. Because if you believe in God, God is a spirit. If you are a Christian, Jesus lived, he died, he was resurrected, he's in heaven, he's a spirit. The saints are spirits. Angels, demons are spirits. Jinn are spirits. Even people who were Buddhist, who lived and died and attained enlightenment and come back as bodhisattvas or compassionate beings that are able to help elevate consciousness in their followers. They're still spirits. So what you have to realize is you have to start compartmentalizing. Okay, this is a very important part of magic and sorcery and witchcraft that you need to understand. In at least in from a magician's standpoint, we categorize everything. We like putting things into categories because it's very easy to go back and pull your resources when you know where everything is. So the study of religion and comparative religion is quite fascinating, because what you'll find, and I've done this for 25 years, what you'll find is that the actual foundations of all religions stem from the same place. So let's go ahead and have this conversation. It's one of my favorite conversations. The three oldest spiritualities, okay, not religions, but the three oldest spiritualities that we've been practicing for hundreds of thousands of years, if not longer, is shamanism, animism, and ancestor worship, ancestor veneration. And any religion or spiritual path that does not contain all three of those components is not old. Doesn't come from antiquity. Doesn't go back far enough. And see, I'm interested in things that are old. I'm interested in things from antiquity. I'm interested in ancient religions and how our ancestors practiced religion 20, 30,000 years ago. Not interested in New Age religions like Christianity, because to me, Christianity is a New Age religion, okay? So I like to do my research and I like to go back through history, through archaeology, through the study of language and the evolution of language over time in order to pull my inspiration to practice my magic. So let's go ahead and break down these three things. What are they? Well, shamanism is a very tricky word, okay? Because originally the word shaman specifically referred to a very specific group of indigenous people that practice magical practices. But shamanism has kind of like become an umbrella term, kind of like Hinduism is an umbrella term for a great variety of practices among indigenous peoples. But there are some commonalities, and there is something called core shamanism. And core shamanism is a kind of like a pseudo-shamanic spiritual path where like the most, I guess you could say, universal components of shamanism has been taken and extracted extracted out of the culture and kind of made a spiritual practice, which you cannot separate spiritual practices from the actual culture from which they're born. But you know that already, right? For the most part, someone who is a shaman has the ability to go into trance. Now, in antiquity, that trance could have been induced by drugs, psychedelics like ayahuasca, magic mushrooms, cannabis, like Hindus had something called soma, which was a special drink or concoction. So shamanism can be someone who uses some kind of psychedelic or natural substances in order to go into a trance, in order to communicate with ancestors and communicate with spirits, gods, goddesses, and what's so on. The other side of shamanism is people that have the ability to go into trance and are trance mediums because they have the psychic abilities, they have the psychic gifts too. It's a gift that they were born with. So traditionally, in a traditional culture, there was a child that was born that showed that they had gifts, okay? Maybe they saw spirits, heard spirits, maybe they had the gift of prophecy, or maybe they became possessed by the spirit, of the ancestor or the spirit of a deity. Then the tribe would take that child to the shaman, usually the medicine man or whoever is responsible for the spiritual and emotional well-being of the community, especially with herbal medicine, was also kind of like a folk practitioner of herbal medicine and a root doctor. I'm using a lot of different kind of language to get my point across, okay? And shamans existed in all cultures: Africa, China, India, Mesoamerica, all over, everywhere in the world you ever go, there was always a shaman, okay? In every culture, someone who was designated as the spiritualist. They would take the child to the shaman, and that shaman would teach that child how to control their abilities, control their gifts, and would raise that child to be a shaman, to take over the mantle of tribal shaman when they passed away. And that's how shamanism has been practiced and was practiced forever. It has to do with someone who has knowledge of spirits, psychic abilities, interpretation of dreams, herbal and botanical knowledge, and divination that can be performed, and trance mediumship. And that child would grow up to learn these things. And it was a master to student, master to disciple kind of practice. Eventually, like in India, drug use reduced, and a lot of rishis or sages would go out into the wilderness and spend ridiculously long amounts of time in meditation in order to get to the places they need to get to without using drugs. There's other ways that shamans have used devices in order to go into trance. That can be sleep deprivation, it could be fasting and starvation, it could be sensory deprivation, everything from being buried in the ground to being hung upside down, and even pain like flagellation or some kind of anything that's going to be able to excite the nervous system and release the hormones in the brain that allow them to go into that space, okay? Because your body does produce DMT. And you can get a DMT dump into your system if you know how to push the right buttons, okay? From a physiological standpoint. So shamanism, it primarily deals with trance, mediumship, psychic abilities, and communicating with spirits. Moses was a shaman, right? He went out into the wilderness. He had a vision of the burning bush. God spoke to him through the burning bush and gave him his commission to go down and do what he did, right? In the Bible. All of the biblical prophets, Isaiah, Jeremiah, Ezekiel, these Jewish mystics that went into trance and was able to go to heaven, their consciousness went up into the heavens to be able to have these amazing images of God, right? And the spirit beings that are in heaven around God. So, there is shamanism in the Bible. okay? And most all religions, the foundations of religion, begin first in shamanism, and then what you start adding on top of that is dogma and ceremony and prescribed ritual and sacrifice and prescribed prayers and, you know, all of that. And then eventually we come to what we have today, which is religion. Now, the next spiritual path I said was animism. What is animism? Well, animism is like witchcraft, okay? Animism is the belief or the understanding that all things inherently contain a spirit. If you grew up watching the Disney Channel, you totally get this concept, okay? Like Beauty and the Beast, where the candelabra can sing and can dance, and the teapots and the all of the furniture is alive, you know? This concept of animism has to do with whenever you attach personhood to any object, either whether it's alive, organic, conscious, unconscious matter, and you prescribe, if you treat that with personhood and give it agency to interact with you, then you're dealing with a living being. And so there's this concept that there are spirits that live in trees, rivers, lakes, oceans, mountains. There are communities of spirits. Every crystal contains a spirit. Every rock contains a spirit. So there is an essence that's fundamental to all things that is animistic. And when you conjure the spirit of a thing, like a rock or a crystal, you are practicing animism. I'm going to give you a great example of animism. I love my car. My car has a name, and I'm sure that a lot of people out there name their cars. My car's name is Alejandro. And whenever I go outside to get in the car, I walk around its back end, and I slap it on the bumper, and I say, "Man, Alejandro, you got a tight ass." And when I get into the car, I pat, the dashboard. I'm like, "Okay, Alejandro, where are we going to go today? Where are you going to take me?" And if I get good gas mileage on a trip, then I compliment my car. I'm like, "You know what, Alejandro, I love you because you do so much for me, and you get me to where I need to go, and you give me the best gas mileage." And my car has a personality based on the relationship that I've created with my car. My car has its own personality and responds to my touch. And so if you want to test animism out, do the same thing with your car, and you'll be shocked and surprised what kind of, it brings just magic into your life, being an animist. And the last and most important part of all of this is ancestor worship, ancestor veneration. What most people don't understand about gods and goddesses is that in antiquity, gods and goddesses were considered to be real people who came to the earth as avatars, lived and died, and went back to the God realm. There are many different realms of existence, according to most ancient and non-Christian Jewish and Muslim worldviews. And so the concept of like Odin or Woden, not only as the all-father of the Norse pagan religion or mythology, but also as Odin or Woden as an ancestor that kings have claimed bloodlines from in order to legitimize their kinghood, okay? Progenitor spirits of the universe. And most definitely Orishas. Orishas are the deities or the entities or the spirits that are petitioned to and served in religions like Lukumi, Ifa, Santerismo, Santeria, but the concept of Orisha is that they're primordial forces of nature that have avatars that literally become embodied, walk the earth, live, die, and become ancestors. And so there's a very close connection between ancestors, honored and elevated ancestors, kings, and also divinities, okay? So there is this concept in antiquity that divinity has the ability to incarnate as an avatar, just like Lord Krishna incarnated as an avatar. Well, Vishnu, the preserver, the Godhead, one of the three Godheads, became incarnated on earth as Lord Krishna, walked the earth, was a God-man, and after he died, you know, then the whole Kali Yuga, which is the end of days or the rough patch of human history, begins. So as you can see, it's actually, what I'm talking about is not complicated. It's not rocket science. And I'm going to encourage you to go back and listen to this video again. And I actually have to take a break because I don't want my videos to be longer than 15 minutes, and I'm already at 16 minutes. So when we come back, we're going to talk more about these different kinds of magic. But all you need to know right now is that animism, shamanism, and ancestor worship is the foundation of all spiritual practices and religions. And if a practice or religion does not contain all three of those components, it's not old.